a woman's body is found dead in the center of a mysterious fairy ring. The police have no idea how she died, and there are no signs of foul play. But as the investigation continues, they uncover secrets about her past that may be connected to her death. This case takes us back to 2006, when a hiker discovered the body of a woman lying in the middle of a fairy ring in the middle of a forest in the UK. A fairy ring is a circular pattern made by some species of fungi. It can vary in size from a few inches to several feet in diameter. They're quite common throughout Europe, North America, and many other parts of the world. They don't actually form rings, by the way. That's just what we call them because of their circular shape. Anyway, this particular fairy ring was located at Cannock Chase, an area of heathland and woodland about 12 miles northeast of Birmingham. When the hiker first spotted the body, he thought it was a mannequin or a scarecrow. But when he got closer, he realized it was a real person. He immediately called the police, and they sent out a forensics team to investigate. The woman was lying face up, and her arms were outstretched as if she had been crucified. Her legs were also spread wide apart, and even though she had been dead for some time, her clothes were still in good condition, which helped the police know that she had not been homeless. Her jeans and top had no rips or tears, and they were clean. She also had no identification on her, but she had 380 pounds in cash in her pocket. At first, the police believed that the woman might have been the victim of a ritualistic murder. This theory was based on the position that she was found in, as well as the fact that she was wearing a necklace with a pentagram pendant. However, after examining the body, the police and the coroner both came to the conclusion that the woman had not been murdered. She had not been stabbed or shot, and there were no signs of a struggle. There was also no evidence that she had been sexually assaulted. So why would someone go to all the trouble of arranging her body like that only to not kill her? Was there some kind of... But as the investigation continued, the police uncovered more and more strange details about the case that did not make sense. For example, they found out that the woman had been dead for at least 2 years before she was discovered. Even so, there were no signs of decomposition or animal activity, which was strange because the weather in the UK is generally quite warm and humid during the summer months. It's not unusual for bodies to decompose very quickly, especially if they're left out in the open like this one was. They were eventually able to identify the woman through her fingerprints. Her name was Julie Howard, and she was a 44-year-old school secretary from Manchester. Before her body was found, she had last been seen alive on April 29th, 2004. Almost 2.5 years earlier. She had been reported missing by her family 3 days later. when she failed to show up for work. At the time, the police believed that she may have simply run away from home. But after finding out that she had been dead all along, they had to reopen the case and start from scratch. Julie was known to frequent Canachés during the 1990s. She had stayed at a local youth hostel while hiking. And she had even worked as a volunteer ranger at one point. So it's likely that she would have known her way around the area very well. But what was she doing there in 2004? And how did she end up dead in the middle of a fairy ring? The police interviewed all of Julia's friends and family members in an effort to find out more information, but nobody seemed to have any clues as to what she may have been up to. She was described as a quiet and unassuming woman who kept to herself. She didn't have many friends, and she had no known enemies. She also wasn't involved in any kind of secret societies or satanic cult. So the police were still no closer to solving the mystery than they were before. As time went on, the case grew colder and colder, and the police eventually had to file it away. They had absolutely no leads, and they didn't think that they would ever be able to identify Julia's killer, whoever it was. But then, in 2011, over 5 years after the body had been found, a man contacted the police claiming to have new information. He told the police that his friend had been involved in an argument with Julie in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, and he believed that she may have been dead all along. The man's name was Gary Jackson, and he was a former soldier who had served in Afghanistan. Gary had been close friends with Julie's husband, Kevin, for many years, and in the weeks following her disappearance, he had tried to convince him that she was dead. But Gary had never spoken to the police before now, because he had been deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq and had only just returned. When asked why he waited so long to come forward, Gary said that he had been advised by a senior officer to stay out of it, because it was already a high-profile case, and they didn't want any more complications. The police decided to take Gary at his word, and they arrested Kevin and brought him in for questioning. He denied murdering his wife and insisted that she had simply run away. However, this didn't stop the police from searching the couple's home, where they found some suspicious items. In particular, they found a pair of gardening gloves that appeared to have traces of blood on. The police also found a spade and a shovel, both of which were covered in what looked like human remains. Gary claimed that these items belonged to Kevin, but Kevin claimed that they were Julie's. He said that she had used them when she gardened and that the blood was probably hers as well. Of course, this didn't really make much sense, because Julia's body had been found without any signs of decomposition, which would not have been possible if she had been buried. Unfortunately, the DNA testing that could have proved once and for all whether or not Kevin was guilty was inconclusive because the blood was too old. In the end, the police had no choice but to let him go. As far as they were concerned, Julia's case was still unsolved, and there was nothing to suggest that she had been the victim of foul play. However, Gary refused to believe that Kevin was innocent, and he continued to insist that he killed Julie during a fight. According to Gary, Kevin had snapped after discovering that Julie was having an affair. He confronted her about it, and a huge fight broke out. During the struggle, Julie hit her head on the floor and died. Kevin panicked and buried her body in the garden. Then a few weeks later, he dug her up and moved her to the fairy ring in Cannock Chase. Despite Gary's claims, the police never charged Kevin with murder, and the case remained cold for another decade until finally in 2021, Gary went public with his story in an effort to get the police to reopen the investigation. With this time, the statute of limitations for murder had expired in the UK, which meant that Kevin could not be sent to prison even if he was convicted. But Gary still wanted justice for Julie, and he wanted her loved ones to know the truth about what happened to her. After hearing Gary's story, the police searched Kevin's garden again. And this time they found more than they were expecting. They found human bones and other personal belongings that were identified as Julie's. Although the DNA testing was again inconclusive, this time due to the items being too old, the police were convinced that Gary was telling the truth. Kevin was arrested once again and taken into custody. He was questioned about his wife's disappearance, and he gave the police a full confession. He admitted that he had killed Julie during a fight, but he claimed that it was... He said that she had attacked him with a pair of scissors, and he had pushed her to the ground where she hit her head and died. Although Kevin finally confessed to killing Julie, he refused to tell the police where her body was, saying that he didn't remember. He was charged with murder and taken to court. But after hearing the evidence against him, he pleaded not guilty. He stuck to his story that it was self-defense and claimed that he had no idea that Julia's body had been found all those years ago. Of course, the prosecution pointed out that this was ridiculous and that if Kevin really thought that burying his wife's body in the garden was not a big deal, then why did he bother moving her to the fairy ring? Why would he stage the scene and arrange her body in such a strange way? Unless he knew that the police would find her eventually. Even though the case was pretty open and shut, somehow Kevin managed to convince the jury that he was not guilty of murder. He was found not guilty of murder, but guilty of the lesser charge of manslaughter. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison, but as he is in his 60s, this means that he is unlikely to survive. As for Gary, he finally feels like he has closure after waiting 17 years for justice. He said that he will never forget what Kevin did to Julie, and that he hopes that he rots in hell. What do you think of this case? Do you agree that Kevin was guilty of murder, or do you think that he got off lightly with a manslaughter conviction? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more.